right, welcome everybody to the Hockey Toolkit Season 3, Episode 5. I am Trevor DiCarlo.
And I'm Andrew Trumbull.
And yeah, we've been away for a little bit, a couple weeks but it's not for not trying. It's more or less just crazy schedules, crazy lives. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of everything, Coach, let's talk about our busy lives. How you been?
Well, good. I think things are kind of shaking out a little bit, easing up on the schedule here. I was coaching like 4 programs in the fall: our Learn to Play program, our U10 team, which is my son's team. I was coaching a split midget team, and then our EHLP team. Split midgets are over, so now I'm just down to the Learn to Play, the tens, and my premier team. So surprisingly, that actually gives me more nights free. So that's great. It's great. How about yourself, Trev?
It still seems like a lot. Yeah, I mean, we've for myself, it's just been busy just because we're in that kind of the dog days of the season now. Um, between middle of November and I feel like, there's like two pieces to it. Like just again, yeah, the middle of November to the middle of December, like right before Christmas break, and then once that's over, and then you're back into it until like the very end. Um, that's where we're kind of at right now. I just got back from St. Louis. We were down there this past weekend. Played three games. The team's actually doing very well. I'm
That's
really
awesome.
really happy with the 2014s this year, and it's this year there's a lot of parity amongst the league, which is great. Considering last year there was a lot of like you're either in the top half or you're in the bottom half. So this year we're there's a lot again. I mean anyone can beat anyone. And we're doing actually very well. Not only just standing wise, but it's like the kids are starting to get it. And when you get compliments from other teams' coaches, like, hey, you guys are one of the better passing teams in the league. You guys really support the puck, this and that. Like, it's like those are things you love to hear. And you try to be modest about it, but it's like, well, we've been really focusing on it. So, I mean, all in all, it's just driving, working my full time gig, and then putting on a podcast or whatever on Spotify, and then just driving an hour to the rink almost during rush hour. So it's kind of where I'm at. But
Now, Trev, you said your teams are passing well and supporting the puck well. What do you attribute that to?
just
Is it a good
coaching,
group of players?
all coaching. It's all coaching. Oh, you know what? I mean, so this is my second year with this group, and we've continued just to try and build off of what we did last year. Um,
So you had continuity a lot with your
right,
players. That's great.
yes. I mean, we lost. I say lost. We had two players go to try the AAA route. And then we had another player who just he loves hockey, but he loves tennis even more. And he didn't like the practicing of hockey as much as he loves playing. So again, I respect the family, I was just saying, hey, like this is what it was. So we did add a couple new kids. So it wasn't like we had a lot of turnover, but the kids that came in, they've been great additions, and we just continue to try and find the message that, if the kids aren't understanding, it's on us as coaches. So we've been trying to find again different messages or different ways to teach stuff. And yeah, I mean, we definitely do spend a lot of time on, passing, and we've focused a lot on support more so this year than I guess you could say last year, because last year was a little bit more of a like we got to get our skills up. Not that we're always not working on those concepts, but I mean, we've been really hammering home that stuff. And shout out to icehockeysystems.com. They've got a great stuff that they put out for coaches, like the drills and stuff. I think every other week we're playing the small area game Gates of Buffalo. And I'm sure you've seen it where you've got 3 pairs of cones, and you
Yep.
play like 3-on-2 or 3-on-3 or however you want to set it up. But you've got to support, you've got to make passes, and in order to get a point, you got to get the puck from one side of the cones, that pair, like through that
It's a
invisible line.
fantastic game. Love that game.
And it's great, especially we play it every other week because that's when we have our goalie coach out. So I give him plenty of time with our goalie. But Playing that game, it's great because the kids, they started finally getting like, hey, you know, I might not be able, like, let's say the team that's got the three guys, you know what, I might not be able to make that a pass for these cones here. So maybe there's a secondary pass I can make that will then lead to a pass through different cones. So maybe I'll use a different teammate. So instead of just trying to force the puck through, we've gotten better at finding that, that next step or that middle step instead of, again, like say, take it for, yeah, we're finding that middle step that gets us to that end goal, that point, or, the goal. And then we're seeing it happen in the games. So again, I mean, I was just looking at the stats the other day for our group, against the teams that are at the time were 500 or better. We had played all of them, I think like 10 or 13 times, and we were only overall goal differential like a -2, and I want to say we were almost 500 against that group, and I mean, all those games were close. Whereas last year, I mean, some of those games were, just blowouts. Just, but again, parity, some other clubs, St. Louis will use for a perfect example. I talk about how I don't like AAA at these younger ages. Well, St. Louis AAA is now happening, and they've got it at well, they've always had it happen, but they've got it now at the squirt level. And some of these teams, the St. Louis Knights, St. Louis Stings, the Eagles, because again, St. Louis doesn't, it's not like they have a ton of teams like a Chicagoland area does. They're kind of spread out. But long story short, now they've got it at the squirt major level is where they got AAA, kind of like we do here up here in Chicago. And some of these clubs have just been decimated. Like they've taken like all of them, and now the St. Louis Blues AAA club, the Junior Blues, whatever they are, and then there's Car Shield out there. Like they've got two, so they now have AAA at that level, and now you're losing the cream of the crop from that group. Like they've basically got hit with the same thing Chicagoland area has gotten hit with. So, which it hurts those clubs, but it does give the next group of kids, that next wave of kids up, an opportunity to play. And again, it has, don't get me wrong, the St. Louis Knights are still a very great hockey club. I mean, last year they ran the league. The Eagles are they're doing well. The Sting are doing well, but it's basically, long story short, what I'm trying to convey here is it's just a lot of parity amongst the league, and anybody can win any given night. We've seen it happen. I mean, we beat the Knights, and they were in first place. And we beat them when they were up here, and so again, it's been fun, and so a lot of it just comes down to the coaching. A lot of us trying to figure out different ways to teach or what we're trying to get across. I'm not running any special systems, so that's really what I attribute it to. Coming full circle on that, real long answer for a simple kind of question, I guess you could say. But
No.
more or less, we've tried to find different ways, and this is what's been working. So when you get a compliment like that from another team's coach, it's always great to hear. It's always
Yeah,
nice.
it's surprising. Like you can compliment the other coach. That's a nice
I
thing to
know.
do.
Well, most of the time you're seeing coaches yell at each other or tell them I'm the
Yeah.
hockey director or whatever. But
You do see plenty of that, but there's occasionally like you run into a coach and he's like, "Hey, your team's get a nice team. They're a disciplined team, or they move the puck well, or the number 97 is a good player, or whatever it may be." And that's
yeah.
okay to do too. We're on the same game together,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I won't say any who the teams are, but there's been a couple where you just don't want to say anything because the team is just so undisciplined and you're just like, they're not, we teach competitive body contact. That was one of the big things we came into this season saying, all right, we want to be more aggressive. We want to teach the players how to, play the body legally, skating through the hands and stuff. And we teach them that. And then we've got teams, and I won't say who they are, but they're coming through and they're not even playing the puck. They're, hands up high, complete body check. And you're like, they're 10-year-olds. Like, this is not like my guys are just getting, they're doing the best they can. Our guys are doing the best they can. But after those games, I want nothing to do talking to the coaches. Just like, okay, good game, whatever. But yeah, no, it's always fun. You know, I mean, going through and just picking coaches' brains and talking to them. You know, I feel like they're, as we all know, as coaches, we got egos. We all do. I mean, no matter what we say, maybe some are bigger than others. But I mean, I think it's fun to, just talk and just say, I think it's great to compliment, how teams are doing or, how goaltenders are playing. I mean, there's games where, you know, in the past I've had teams where the team just played awful, but the goalie played great, and for the coaches to be like, hey, your goalie really, he kept you guys, he saved, he not saved you, but he kept you guys in the game or he stood on his head. Like those are things you like to hear, instead of just like, oh, good game and that's it.
I always kind of found it to be sometimes though, like a little bit of a backhanded compliment if a coach says to you, "Oh, you got a good goaltender there." It's like, well, then are you saying my team sucks?
Right, and that's what I was like when I was saying using that example, I was like, well, that's not always, but like hey, like where you've played like a game that's really close, but your goalie's made some great saves, or
Yeah,
maybe we didn't get as many shots,
and,
but
and credit is where credit's due sometimes, for sure.
right, but yeah, no, I mean, so overall, how now we're in December right now as we are recording this. How is it running an actual full-fledged you know? Just a youth hockey program all the way up.
It's fun. It has its moments. Early on in the season, there was some hiccups with just the way we communicate compared to some other previous organizations. Uh, and we worked our way through those. I do think that we have a good online presence on social media, and our website's always up to date. We still communicate through some emails, usually once a month in terms of organizational emails. So I think that the communication level has been pretty high, and it was an adjustment for people for sure. Um, I do think that it's really exciting to see our learn to play as we offered last year a free learn to play, and we're doing the same thing this year.
Hmm.
And we've gotten a tremendous amount of equipment donations from families because we
That's
really advocated
fantastic.
for a lot for that. So there's I think there's over 30 kids in our program, in our small little program here in New Hampshire. Um, and they're playing for free, and they got their equipment and skates for free. Like
That's huge.
it's exciting. It's so
Yeah.
exciting to see where we're going to be in a couple of years with those numbers kind of growing. In terms of if you compare last year plus this year, now we're sitting at over 60 kids who never played hockey before who are now playing hockey.
It's
It's
fantastic.
exciting. Yeah, so we're excited about that. We want to make I know USA Hockey always says hockey's for everybody, but you can't do that then charge X amount of dollars for equipment and ice. You got to kind of put your money where your mouth is sometimes, and we've done that, and hopefully it pays dividends down the road because we want more kids playing hockey.
No, I mean that's again, it's hockey's for everyone, and we want to make it as affordable as possible. I mean, most of us, some of us just want to buy rinks and jack up the ice prices and claim we did something different, and then whatever. But yeah, no, I
By
mean,
the paint cans, right? By the new paint cans.
yeah, exactly. But no,
Look
I
at
mean,
this gorgeous paint.
yeah, we fixed one bathroom toilet, and that's
Oh,
it.
50% of all the light bulbs work adequately.
Yeah, perfect.
Well,
Well,
that brings it. I think though we can turn at that point, Trevor, over to our guest, which is a big guest for us. We're excited about the Dan K Show. The Dan K Show covered the USPHL for 10 years, as well as the NCDC and all their affiliate organizations and leagues and levels. And they're going to give us a great nuanced perspective about what the landscape is, the current landscape within USA junior hockey at all the levels, and especially with this new CHL agreement coming down the pipeline. So we turn it over to Dan K and Luke Show and Lucas Jones right now. Thank you very much. All right, hockey fans, here we have with us Dan K and Lucas Jones from the Dan K Show. They run an outstanding social media platform and podcast company that covers all the junior hockey across the United States. And we want to get some of their feedback on some of the recent happenings within junior hockey here in the U.S. So welcome aboard to the show on the Hockey Toolkit, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us, guys. It's fun to finally meet you both here via podcast.
Absolutely. Well, my first question for you guys is, really what, your first couple impressions on the 24-25 season. We've had a lot of upheaval over the summer. It's been kind of a turbulent couple months. And what are your initial impressions with all the leagues, everything going on in the U.S. here?
Yeah, Lucas, I'll start here. It's been wild. I think it's been wild for you guys as well, and kind of your dealings in it from the youth game all the way through the junior game, through the college ranks. And it starts with stuff we're covering right now when it's CHL players having NCAA Division I eligibility all of a sudden, and nil money and all the things that are going on at that level, down to some of the things with private equity in the junior hockey game and teams moving here and there. And I guess a word I would use, disappointing at times over the last few months, right? I think as somebody who has always been an advocate for the players themselves, and for us, our motto has always been players first, right? It's always been, we got into this business because a decade ago, as a former college baseball player, I was working for the Philadelphia Flyers organization, and I saw a tier 3 hockey player get traded. And I couldn't believe it. The kid was playing at tuition, right? His parents were paying thousands of dollars to play junior hockey, and he was traded to our organization. And I said, "What do you mean you were traded?" And I just started to learn about these players' rights and some of the things they deal with, and some of the great owners out there, some of the great coaches out there, some of the poor ones. In the last few months, we've seen more of the bad side of, I think, junior hockey and development right now. And I think it's opportunities like this to talk to folks like yourself who are on the right side of this, kind of battling for good in this game and battling for these players. It's been a nice change of pace to be able to have conversations like this, and I'm excited to have it.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things too is you put a lot of sweat equity into something, right? I mean, this is our 10th year. We crossed the 10-year threshold of covering junior hockey. Our ethos, I think, is covered by our original name. What we wanted the show to be called initially, the Zamboni Jabronis. And I think one thing that Dan and I have talked about through everything that's happened this offseason, I just keep saying I got into this business because I wanted to talk about Zambonis with my jabroni. I didn't want to necessarily get into all of the other stuff, but as you, I think, get into the world of junior and college hockey, you get a love for the game, but also a love for the types of players that grind out in junior and college hockey. And, you want to make sure that they're getting what they're paying for. They're paying a lot. They pay a lot over the course of their hockey playing career. So I think that's part of why we're still out here. Is we feel a passion towards these players and we want to make sure they're doing all right.
That's a fantastic answer, and I couldn't agree with you more. Like, we had on Adam Hooley maybe a month or so ago, Trevor, and he was talking about how he was kind of in the same boat where he's just kind of disappointed with how everything's kind of shaking out. Like, we're putting financial interests and the interests of these big businesses and corporations ahead of what hockey's all about, and that's about the players and about a player's experience and their dreams and their opportunities to get to get to where they want to get to. And that's kind of the same sentiment we all shared on that same podcast, was that same kind of feeling. What do you see? I know it's crystal balling. It's really tough. Where do you see things shaking out in these next couple months? I mean, obviously that's going to be really tough, but what have you seen, positive, negative? Where do you see things happening in the next couple months?
Yeah, my phone rings off the hook with great people around the country in all different leagues and in all different places. And I think the biggest thing that you're likely to see in the next few months, you look crystal ball, is more shakeup. I think that you look in the northeast of the country, I think the battle being waged right now is a battle that was waged back when the NCDC launched, right? When the NCDC launched, it took itself away from USA Hockey, which was an eye-opener to the world, and tried to launch its own tier 2 product, right? Tuition free. And I think that same world where they had to rebrand what tier 2 hockey was in that launch period is happening again right now. And you've heard jokingly tier 2.5. I think that's what the future looks like in that Northeast. I think that's going to be the only way that the competition continues to exist there, with just how much money is being thrown behind one of the competitors in that market. And it's going to be an interesting future. There will be benefits for some players because of this. There'll be guys that maybe never would have had an opportunity or a lick at tuition-free hockey that'll get a chance to play for free solely because free market will speak and dictate. there will also be a lot of great organizations that run themselves right who do charge for hockey that will struggle in that world trying to compete and might go away and might cease to exist in that market. So the goods and the bads, that's going to be the hardest thing to crystal ball, right? How much good is going to come from this? How many good operators are going to get hurt and bad operators might exist for now? And then eventually the bubble bursts of that tier two tuition free or the tier three or the tier 2.5. That's the most interesting thing to see. And I think around the country, I think there are a lot of folks that feel a lot of different ways and feel like we all get focused on what's happening in the Northeast and we forget about everybody else west of the Mississippi and south of Virginia. And I think those folks are going to make some noise all over the country in every league. I think that'll be interesting to see too.
Well, it's funny you mention that because one of the biggest shakeups really in 2012, 13 was kind of my first couple of years in the industry and as a coach in junior hockey. And the EJ.
Are you implying that you were the shakeup, that you were just joining in? Yeah.
No, I was a casual observer,
just curious,
an assistant coach, just trying to cut my teeth. That's all.
Sorry, I digress.
But one of those things was when the EJ South came into place, right? So you had the EJ, and then they purchased that Southern League. I forget the name of it. It might have been the Empire or something like that. But they rebranded it and called it the EJ South, elevating it to this EJ level, which it clearly was a really great league. That kind of started the whole domino effect that eventually led, I believe, into the USPHL Premier, then the NCDC, and so on and so forth. What is the perception? You're dealing with a lot of organizations all across the country. What is the perception outside of the Northeast of the Northeast?
I think it's elitist right now, I think would be the impression. I think the impression is there's times where the Northeast thinks it's the only thing that matters, right, in this game. And I think it's an impression that a lot of people had about Minnesota for a long time, that only Minnesota hockey mattered and nothing else mattered. And you had the Minnesota Junior Hockey League up there and folks, it was that and no one else mattered to them. And I think you're looking at a world now where that Northeast product has a spotlight on it because of all the moving, the shaking, the teams jumping ship and other teams trying to jump here and there. I think the biggest thing you look at if you are a team elsewhere in the country is how is any of what's happening there benefiting me? And that's a big question, right? How is anything happening up there? Is it going to benefit me in the end? Or is this just another thing that is pulling attention away from my ability to recruit, my ability to keep a roof over my head and my team's head, my ability to fill the ice with good developmental hockey, and my ability to grow the game? And I think those are the biggest things that I always focus on when I talk with folks is, look, if you have a good development product, I don't care at the junior hockey level. I might be different than some people if you win 2 games or 40 games. If the players come into your rink as A and they leave as another level down the list, right? If they come in as a 3 out of 10 and they leave as a 6 out of 10, you're accomplishing your goal. You're developing at that level. And that's what it should be. The question for those guys outside the Northeast is going to be, are they forgetting we exist? And how is our product affected by this, right, Lucas?
Yeah, I think the way I've described the Northeast sometimes is it's the same coaches having the same steak dinners with the same 10 programs every single year, right? Hawking the same 12 types of guys from their program. And that worked in a world where YouTube didn't exist. One fun fact and one story that I really like to tell is when Dan and I first started, maybe showing our age, unfortunately, a little bit, we were told that YouTube wasn't where the future of entertainment was, and that it was for videos of people falling down and basically hurting themselves. And
I mean, those are great videos.
They're great videos. Listen, don't get me wrong. But we were told that YouTube was not the future, that we didn't need to put players on video. We didn't need to have broadcasters. We barely even needed to have social media. That's not how recruitment happens. Well, I mean, by my calculations, that's a bit of an outdated model. And I think the frustration from programs outside of the Northeast, which I'll admit is the bedrock, right? We all know the programs, we all know the schools. That's fine. But I think the frustration, a growing frustration, is, hey, I'm getting commitments. Maybe not all D1, D3, but I'm getting D3, I'm getting ACHA. I'm doing really well regionally. My social media is on point. I'm promoting players. I'm giving them great experiences. We have 600, 1,000, 2,000 fans that come into our building. We're helping the community. We're doing XYZ, and we're being treated like second-class citizens, right? And I think there is, and I like to harp on the word growing, a growing frustration that why are we being treated like second-class citizens when players are, in some respects, begging to play in front of fans? They're begging to have social media. They want the stick deals. They want the endorsements. They want the patches on the back of the jersey. That's where the future is headed. And I think that might be the source of where some of that frustration is.
That's
Do you think?
Oh,
Do you
sorry,
think
Trent.
that? I mean, do you think that maybe there is just potentially one entity who is just driving that type of like, okay, I'm going to make sure that we're only endorsed by this group and you get this and you get that? Or do you think it's a conglomerate of like the league? And basically what I'm saying is like one individual person pushing the set agenda of this and that, and this is how it's going to go, or it's my way or the highway, or do you think it's an actual? Do you guys believe with who you've talked to over last however long that it's it's an everybody type idea?
What I would say is just because there's a king in the castle doesn't mean there's generals not running the army, right? So I think that there's more than just someone wearing a crown and dictating. I think there are plenty other folks who are winning because of that mindset, because of that singular mentality of this is my world. You can swim in the pool in the backyard and be happy, or you can get out of my yard and I'll make sure that the pool doesn't exist for you anymore. Like again, I still think there can be success in a world like that if the overall end goal is to make hockey accessible to players and families and to deliver on the product. If I want to run a team tomorrow, I want to make Dan K's All-Stars, right? And I want to join the EHL, or I want to join the NCDC, or I want to join the NOM. And I charge $20,000 to my team's players when they come in. If I deliver $20,000 worth of product, that's fine, right? Like you're making your money. If at the end of the day, every kid on my team plays NCAA hockey, every kid on my team is 10 times better than he was before, and you get the best experience you've ever had and you're playing in front of 10,000 fans, that's fine. And I think I can be that person. The problem is there is no such thing as a billionaire philanthropist, and no one's doing it for that reason. No one has that money for that reason. Comcast doesn't exist because they really think they can get you cable the best way possible. Comcast exists because it puts a lot of mom and pops out of business and runs cable into your home so it can continue to raise prices. And that's the biggest thing that I see at this time. So yes, there are people that wear crowns in this industry right now that are leading the way, but it doesn't mean that there's not a lot of generals who are sitting by going, sure, I'll take this and let's make it work. Let's keep pushing this. This is working for me. The money's trickling down. Let's keep the army rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes total sense.
I do think that in addition to that, there is, Dan and I do feel confident speaking for Dan here, where normally I would say I don't, but in this case I do. Where we're not people who are trying to say that, hockey parents, hockey players don't know better. In fact, it's the opposite. They know more now than they ever have before. When teams bring us in to work in a consulting role, the first thing we tell them, hockey players can sniff this stuff out. You got to be upfront with them. They talk. They all have their groups. They know what the deal is. So if you come in and you promise them something, like Dan said, and you don't deliver, that's where we have the problem. If a team comes to you and says, hey, listen, we play other teams in our footprint. We don't have a team bus. We have the older players drive the younger players. You get 3 sticks a year from us. You don't get any kind of apparel package. That's what you get. If you tell players and parents that, and they still sign up for your program, that's fine, right? That's an informed decision. You're being honest. The problem is when a program sells itself as a thing, like comparing it to other organizations, and then doesn't deliver. When all the other organizations have a bus, and all of a sudden you're driving yourself to away games. When other organizations provide apparel and you don't. When other organizations have something like a home rink and you're sharing a rink with other teams. I think that's where we have a problem, is just deliver what you promise, and don't overpromise what you can't deliver.
No, that's fantastic.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think that this is the age of transparency because of social media and the small size of the hockey world, for sure. It's funny you said, it referenced the old way of sales, earlier, and it made me think of that Michael Scott episode where he is selling the old, bringing the gift bags to all the places, and they're kicking them out. You hate it. Where are my turtles?
Yes.
But the way social media is the driving engine of the advertising for all these programs, and it's really changed the landscape. And in terms of transparency, it's done that as well. Like, kids, they know what they're getting now because they can share that information so much more. What do you think about the tier labels? Like, they're really tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. What world do we exist in right now, do you think?
I think it was already muddied when we had some of the movement this offseason and during the season now. I think the mud turned into just straight up dirt after the CHL ruling came down, right? Now you're looking at it. What is the USHL, right? Is that a tier 1 organization? Is that going to be a tier 2 organization in terms of what type of player is there? If everyone goes north, is that going to be an organization that ties itself to the CHL and becomes major junior? Like, what happens there? And I think that's going to dictate a lot of what people can then call themselves. And I think the problem in the hockey world is, you look at the tier structure. It was something I fought against as an outsider looking in when I started in this, right? I started in this with a very different mentality than somebody who played hockey, worked up the ranks, and had that badge of honor of, hey, I played in the NAL, I played tier 2, or I played in the USHL, I was a tier 1 guy, or I played here, I played there. I came at it from kind of a pragmatic look of, well, what are we doing? What does it matter, right? What matters more is the product you're delivering. Like, I think that this hockey game has to get further away from the tiered structure, number one. And I think somehow, some way, there needs to be a kumbaya moment in this sport. And it's not going to happen with everyone, because there are going to be people that make more money when there's wars happening. That works in government. It works with countries. It works in sports and business, right? There's people who make money when things are going wrong. The ones who aren't making that money from the catastrophe right now are the ones that should be looking in the mirror saying, how am I benefiting from the current model? And if those people can come together, I think we stop worrying about tiers and we go back to the old world. Could you imagine a Memorial Cup at the tier 3 level, right? Where you've got different portions of the country coming together with real champions playing in a real championship. That's exciting. That's the best possible thing for players. The best possible thing for a kid that just invested in your organization for an entire year and won and was successful to go through. So I think the tier structure is what creates a lot of our business struggles. It's what creates a lot of world where there's tier 3 players that aren't paying, or I've heard of stories where players are being paid to play tier 3 hockey, crazy enough, right? And there are all these stories around the country because we are so worried as families and players about what happens next after junior hockey, and we are investing a lot of time and effort and money. We have to find a better way to do it. And we have to find a better way to bring this sport together for the development as a whole. Because right now we live in a world where the NCAA is not helping the process with the latest news and the way they dropped it. So at the top, it's not being helped out. At the bottom, we're all fighting. Everybody's fighting for the next dollar, for the next bit of tuition, for how much they can make. And in the middle, everyone's sitting there as all this is happening on both sides, trying to figure out, what direction do we go with this business model? None of it helps development of US-based hockey. And I think everybody on this call right now is pretty interested in that. Anybody listening to this is pretty interested in the success of US hockey and the development of their player. So the tier structure itself, I think there needs to be a revisiting of it. You're not going to get it as a whole, but I think there have to be leaders that are the people who are doing it right, who kind of take the helm and find out how.
There's a saying that we use a lot on Hockey 101, cooperation before competition. And that has got to be the stance of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. As Dan said, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You don't have a unified governing body. You have two major leagues outside of USA Hockey right now, two major leagues still inside. Last I checked, that's 50-50. That's not a controlling stake in anything. Instead of battling over terms like unsanctioned, over terms like tier 2.5, it needs to be a recognition that what the CHL decision has done has dropped a bomb. It has dropped a bomb on US hockey. And you watch an alien invasion movie, right? What happens? All the countries come together to fight back against the mothership, right? That's what needs to happen in USA hockey. Now, I think you extend that one step further. There needs to be cooperation with Canadian hockey after this whole thing stabilizes, and it needs to become a true North American hockey product. But I think right now, USA hockey needs to get it together in the sense of recognizing that the health of the whole is better than trying to fight these hyper regionalized battles, which ultimately don't get you anywhere. They just weaken the product in the face of a much more, say, esoteric struggle here for the continued existence of US hockey.
You guys are way more articulate than Andrew and I, that's for sure.
No, I'm sitting here. I'm like chomping on the bit for every answer to your questions. You guys are killing it, knocking it out of the park. So
I had like
so
5 words in my vocabulary, and none of them even come close. But to your lexicon, that's a
What
big
you
word,
both
though.
can't see is my list of words that Lucas gives me.
It's the word of the month.
He's got that SAT word list just pasted to his wall.
Now, guys, I did listen to your summer episode where you left from the departure from the USPHL. I know you probably don't want to get too deeply into that, but what is the future of the Dan K Show look like now that you've departed from that product and you're now servicing every junior hockey league?
Yeah, and for folks that are new to us, man, we're open books. Like, this is, to me, I never want someone to not be who they are to me. I have people who I love in this game who a lot of people would say they make them pull their hairs out, but they are who they are to me, they are who they are to them, and they are who they are to everyone else. They're not a zebra to one person and a giraffe to another, right? They are the same person they are in every walk. And that's something I pride myself on. It's something I had a great call. And Lucas and I have had multiple great calls with guys like Neil Ravin at the EHL in past months here, where those were guys that we were competing against, right? We were being paid to compete against and try to make a better product than when it came to media and marketing and putting a league on the map for a while. And even in those conversations, like I told Neil, I'm exactly who I was on those shows that you didn't like. So I'm going to be the same guy in this call, but it doesn't mean I don't have an immense respect for what you guys are doing and how you guys are elevating the game too. And I think that's kind of where we found equal ground. And I think when it comes to that side of it and what made us leave, like, we didn't have to leave. It wasn't a situation where we were bullied out. It wasn't a situation where we were told there's the door and go. We were under contract. We could have continued to kind of roll. And for us, it's just, I got into this to help people. I got into this to help players. That is me speaking for me. And I think Lucas is in the same place. And everything we've done and the sweat equity, as Lucas calls it, that we put in with that league to grow it from when I started, 10 teams in the Northeast to 100+ teams nationwide at 2 different levels of hockey, and to scale the media to cover that, to scale the broadcasting to cover that, to scale all of that. And then to see that there was just a mentality of income first and then figure everything else out, figure out the money-making avenues, and then figure everything else out, just at a top-down kind of look. It just didn't fit what we were working towards. And to me, the future for us is always going to be creating products that are worth what we charge, creating something that isn't just Dan and Lucas having fun and like we're talking on a camera and we're doing all this stuff that's genuinely benefiting players, stuff that is genuinely helping spotlight what a player does or what a league does or what a team does. And that's always going to be our push. And it's always going to be trying to do the next big thing that hasn't been done at the junior hockey level or the collegiate hockey level. We've had tons of conversations over the last 4 months with commissioners of leagues, with guys that run things at the collegiate level, with colleges themselves. And we've kind of been sitting on the sidelines right now because of how crazy everything's been. And just trying to watch, like getting involved right now, right? Picking a horse while the race is going on and the ground's falling out underneath all the horses. You don't want to be a jockey tied to anything right now. You want to kind of see, and we feel like we're in a place to better help people right now when we're not tied to anything, right? We kind of had a ship we've been sailing on forever. Let's see what it's like on the shore. So that's where we're at right now. I think the biggest thing is I'm always going to champion what's good for players. There are so many people in the USPHL that do it right. There's so many people in the EHL that do it right. There's so many people in the NOL that do it right. And there's also so many people that don't, right? And it's like, and the thing is, you try to right now work to put a spotlight on all the good, work to help out great things, work with podcasts like this that we would have never had a chance to get on in the past, right? And have real conversations. I think this is where it starts, and you try to educate the audience.
Yeah, I think the big thing too for us is we've always done this work on a basically a prove it basis for the last 10 years, right? When we started, there wasn't really a ton of what we did out there. We certainly didn't invent sports coverage, but at the level that we were working at, born 50 years too late. But we certainly created a brand inside a space that needed a brand like what we were trying to do. And over the course of that time, I mean, we really tried to expand and scale what we did. And up to this past year, it was essentially the two of us. Every piece of content that came out of the Dan show was made by one of us. And this year we've brought on some absolutely incredible, and I think more importantly, like-minded people. James Blano, who does our NCAA D1 podcast, Ice Level, is a Kmiechick student who is an award-winning producer who puts out incredible content every week.
I still say his name wrong.
You say his name wrong every time, and at this point, it's part of the bit. I don't know if he knows it's part of the bit, but it's part of the bit for us. But I think the biggest thing for us is the work comes first, and for a long time, and continuing, the money comes second. We've never taken a free dollar at any point during our time. The only money that Dan's ever taken is from me on the golf course when I mentally collapse on the 18th hole. But aside from that, we like to think we've earned everything that we've gotten so far. And personally, I'm really excited for what is coming next. I think there is an appetite for honest coverage, honest to a fault, maybe, but honest coverage of an ever-changing landscape.
Well, I know from personal experience, I'm more glued into what you guys are doing now than ever before. And it's exciting to see where you're going to be in the next couple of years. And as the landscape kind of evolves, how much you're going to be involved in that. So I don't have anything else for you. Trevor, do you have anything else for Dan and Lucas?
No, I mean, I guess the next time we got to talk, I got to have like a thesaurus here and a dictionary and all this stuff because, man, I'm behind. I'm a hockey coach though, so.
You mean the files are in the computer?
Yeah.
Inside the computer.
Yeah.
This would be the first time I've ever been told I was eloquent or intelligent. I will take that.
You're very articulate. Yes, I mean the vocabulary that you guys are using is exquisite, and
It's glorious.
Yes, and I feel like what we say is asinine half the time. So I mean, that's
well, boys. I mean, we look at what you guys do and what you guys have built in this space as well, in more ways than one, has been incredible for us to see, right? And I think there's been times for us in the past where we've kind of had a muzzle because you've got a place where you're working, right? You've got a place that you are, and there needs to be people that do more than just advocate for one space. And I think you guys have done such a great job at that as well. And that's something that was exciting for us to get a chance to finally sit down and talk with you guys and see what you do and kind of meet you really in person here over the internet. And I think the future too for us, like it's working with more folks like you guys, right? And doing things where for us, I want to be a leader of change in this game. I want to be the leader that brings this development train back on the tracks. I think right now it's floating around somewhere. It's in space. We got to put that thing back on the track and not up with all the drones that are flying over Lucas's house there in New Jersey. We got to get things.
So many drones. It's like a statistically significant amount of drones that are currently flying over New Jersey. I know we have the best bagels and pizza in the country. I don't know if the drones are here for our bagels and pizza, but I wish they would make their intentions known because I got a good bagel spot right up the street. So I can help them out if they need it.
My daughter. So we're at Manasquan Beach this summer, and my daughter's 11, and she's watching the planes go by with the advertisements,
Yeah.
and she's like, "Dad, they have advertised like on the beach in New Jersey?" I said, "Yeah, like they just fly right over, right from the Alaire Airport. They fly right across, and they got all the so you got drones, you got advertising, you got everything you need right in front of your face."
That's it. And we're advertising everywhere. That's what it's all just people making money in the skies now. That's what we're gonna find out. This whole drone thing over New Jersey was like a Papa John's pizza routine.
Gosh.
Yeah, never pass up a good opportunity to advertise to folks, I guess might be the motto. But I mean, I do want to kind of echo what Dan was saying is it's been awesome to see the space surrounding junior hockey fill with people who do care and who do put out a good product like you both do, and really have the passion for it. I know at first when you're in a prove it situation and you see people doing what you're doing, for you it's frustrating because you're trying to prove it, right? And I think that cooperation before competition motto is something that we are certainly living and have been trying to live the last couple of years, and it's been great to talk with people we haven't really talked to over this summer. It's great talking to you guys today. It's really been maybe a little therapeutic for us to enter this space and kind of open up our arms and say, let's all be friends. Let's all just keep hanging out and talking about something that we all love, because it really is. Junior hockey's awesome. Like you're going to sit here and tell me that like some kid who just loves hockey but isn't quite good enough to make it to D1, D3, right? Maybe they'll try to walk on somewhere, but maybe this is the end of their hockey career and they're going to go study to be an engineer who builds the next skyscrapers or bridges, or NASA scientist to help us get to Mars, or a teacher who helps educate the next generation. But you're going to tell me that that kid doesn't deserve to play out the last two years of his junior hockey experience in a really positive way, surrounded by positive people, if they're billeting in a positive billet environment, right, with coaches who care and who are responsive to parents. I think that's what we're all after, is just making sure that players, no matter their skill level, no matter their destination, they can pay a little bit of cash, they can go live somewhere new, and they can play hockey, which is awesome.
Well, guys, you guys are approaching this thing with complete integrity and complete genuine openness to the whole experience. And I thank you so much for joining us today. And I wish you a ton of success as you go further down this road of your independence. And good luck to you guys. And love to have you on again sometime in the future, because you guys were awesome tonight. Thank you. All right. So once again, thank you to Dan and Lucas for joining us on the podcast. Really appreciate them taking their time out of their busy schedules to join us and have a great discussion about everything going on with this ever-changing landscape. Trevor, what were some of the things you really stuck out to you about some of their responses?
I mean, besides the obvious that I need to read more books. No, I mean they were very, very sincere, very open, very honest with what they were, how they felt, what they saw. Again, these are two guys that are doing it for the right reasons. Um, and again, like no different than anyone else. I mean, everyone, you have to be compensated for your time and your energy and your efforts. But again, they're guys doing it for the right reasons. And I really love the we are charging you for what you expect from us, like, and we are going to deliver, like, and that's sadly that, not only in other businesses or products, across the entire just every item, like whether it's fast food, whether it's an actual like product that you're selling or a store, whatever. But mainly hockey teams too. Like there's a lot of teams that are overselling and under delivering. There's a lot of leagues that are overselling and under delivering. There's a lot of advising companies that are overselling and under delivering. Um, you could sue me for that one. Um, but no, I mean, I really thought that they were, again, they're in it for the right reasons again. And, it just shows you another level of the hockey world that they're not coaches. they're not players, they're not advisors, they're not owners of any teams, but they're a part of the, this hockey niche that, they're part of the content world of it. And again, they're in it for the right reasons. And again, those are the people that we like to highlight, we like to showcase, we like to talk to. So for me, that was refreshing to have and to be able to talk with them and just hear all that, information and such. What did you take from it, Coach?
Yeah, that old adage, like you just hit on, of under promising and over delivering. That's a thing that's overlooked oftentimes when you run a business. But I think it's really a critical component to have integrity and value for your customer. I think their new direction they're headed in, where they can cover everybody, is going to be exciting. Like, they are obviously people that build relationships with their customers. They have on their podcast, they have a lot of the same guests over and over, and there's a very friendly, very friendly conversation because they get to know each other on a very personal level, and that's fantastic. They hit on a couple times where they said, we want to be a place where the players come first, and that's something that's lacking oftentimes when we're talking about these big ideas of tier 1, tier 2, college placement, USHL, NA, whatever it may be. It's overlooked that we're dealing with players who had dreams. A kid who was 6 years old, 7 years old, and picked up a hockey stick, went to a game, and what did he feel when he walked into that building? What did he want out of the game? And a lot of times, just people forget about that. They're just focused on, well, he's just a number. He's wearing that jersey this year, but it's more than that. That's that kid's experience, and you got a chance to make a positive impression on a kid, wherever it may be. It represents a tremendous amount of value to that kid.
No, absolutely. I think they're doing, again, as I said, they're doing it for the right reasons. They're in it for the right reasons. The players coming first, and that's what at this level of at any level that is not professional, it should be. It should be the players are coming first. And right now, with how crazy the hockey landscape is, from the CHL and the NCAA all the way down, I think we forget sometimes just how much all those decisions not only affect those players, but also the players all the way down at the, I don't want to say lower end, but at the, at the levels that are more obscure to some people. Again, we're calling it tier 3, okay? Like, it is. So people forget, like, what are these decisions going to have for the kids that are playing in the EHL or in the USPHL or in the NA3? You know, um, what is it going to do? And I think the fact that that they are out there providing that type of, well, we're going to give you guys the best content and branding and social media presence, like, that's fantastic.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that's overlooked about this CHL thing and the NCAA thing is really, at the end of the day, how much it is really going to be a struggle for U.S. hockey players to play Division I college hockey.
No, absolutely.
That's the biggest thing that's overlooked, is that we're going to have a lot of U.S. colleges. It's already 50%, which are Canadian players. Where does that go to now when you open up this whole pool of players, which was excluded from that level? What does that look like for them? Now, there is the Division II and Division III opportunities, but those spots are still limited. We have in total like less than 150 teams at all three levels of NCAA college hockey, around 150 teams, which is half. Like that's half the number of teams. And so how many teams are in the NCAA tournament? 64 teams in the Division I, like, to make the tournament?
No.
Isn't it 64 teams?
I don't even. Oh, for the March Madness or hockey?
March Madness.
Well, no, that's even more because they've added in those like extra like play-in games they have. But yeah, it used to be, yes, 64 was the standard, and now they've got a couple more that they've added in. Like, we're just gonna let
play and stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
I stopped following after high school, and I just lose money on brackets. But
yeah,
so 64 teams is roughly the size of all of Division I hockey or Division III hockey. Like
Right.
that's roughly the same size. And those are the teams that have an opportunity to compete for the national championship. That's wild.
And again, with this whole thing, and I know it's a topic that you and I have wanted to discuss, and we just haven't been able to do it at the right time. We've got a couple people that want to come on and talk more with it. I mean, we can definitely broach it here a little bit at the beat right now, but there's just so much unknown right now, and you've already said that like what is this going to mean for even USA hockey? I mean, you and I both are proponents of all hockey in general. Again, I mean, we live in the US, so obviously we care about the players that we have, but you coach players from all over the globe. I know people all over the globe. So I mean, that are in hockey, not the people that I play like Call of Duty with. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, like we know people from all over the world in hockey, and I mean, you're coaching players from all over the globe. So like, it is a lot of unknown. And the worst thing that people hate is uncertainty, the unknown. I mean, that's why we've got such a bad mental health crisis in our society, is because there's people with the unknown, not knowing what's to expect, and change. This is an entire change of the entire development model
It's seismic. For
I
sure.
mean, I don't know, outside of implementing a draft or changing the draft age down from 20 to 18, like this is probably the next biggest thing that has happened in the NHL in regards to player development. Like, and yeah, one could sit back and say like, hey, this is going to make the NCAA product even better. Which, as a fan of watching NCAA hockey, absolutely, like, yeah, sure. But on the other side of it, though, what is that going to do, as you said, at that tier, the Division II, Division III, like ACHA level? What is that going to do? I remember I've talked to a few people, and one person mentioned, and again, they're more of a casual observer. They're like, well, there'll be more, NCAA programs. I was like, what, NCAA hockey programs? Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, how do you figure? I mean, it costs a fortune to get one to start up. It's not like, oh, well, because we've got this influx of players. No, it's going to make things even tighter for players. And, like, again, if I'm Brandon Naurato over at Michigan, like, I'm stoked because now I've just got this huge pool of players. I think they do a fantastic job there anyways, but you've got this huge pool of players that just opened up. And I mean, we're not talking just like guys that might be fifth, sixth, seventh round draft picks if they even make it to the pros. We're talking like guys that are going to eventually be first, second, third rounders, like picks, like high level picks.
Yeah.
And now schools like them, Denver, I mean, like all the big NCAA teams, they now have free reign to sign these players as long as they meet the academic, responsibilities that they need to and be at that certain, threshold. Like, what's to stop these, Gavin McKenna's, these kids that are, 2 years out from playing in the, getting drafted in the NHL? What's from stopping them from going into the NCAA at 16 and by advancing their, schooling by 2 years? I mean, that's a little bit extreme, but we do see a lot of, players from Canada that have, were playing in like the BCHL or the AJ or CCHL who, played in the NCAA their draft year. A couple, it's somewhat common. Like Taves, I know, did it. I think Miles Woods?
I'm not sure.
The
Ken
one
McCarr was a year away though. He played in AJ, and
I
then
think
he
it was
then
whatever
UMass.
Wood just transferred from wherever to Minnesota now. And I know I'm kicking myself because I looked it up the other day and I saw him play. But like those guys, like, okay, they played. Now, I think we're going to see more of that now because instead of those players playing against guys that are at max 20, I mean, it's like now you're opening it up to players that are guys that are over 20, 21, 22. I mean, the incoming freshman's
for
typically what? How old is the NCAA Division I incoming freshman? Typically 19, 20?
Yeah. Now you're gonna have players who played 4 years in the Ontario Hockey League who are still going to be eligible to play NCAA Division One hockey for sure, and they'll be going in as 21-year-olds.
Right. So now all of a sudden, if you're those top prospects, well, like Matthews, he went to Zurich over in Switzerland to play against men when in his draft year. Like, what is going to happen now? Now, I mean, if I'm in the OHL, I can go to Michigan. I can go to Michigan State. I can go to Western Michigan. I can go to Wisconsin. But I mean, I can, you know, all of a sudden it opens up this huge realm of, oh, okay, well, I don't have to go over there overseas to play against guys that are 6, 7 years older than me. I just
Yeah,
have to go
30-year-olds
across.
for
Yeah,
sure.
I just got to go across the border,
Yeah.
and so as
And
as the guy said on the show, from how Dan and Jacob said, like, it's not Jacob, is it?
Lucas.
Damn it! Like Dan and Lucas said, like, what does that do for the USHL? Like, what does
Yeah.
that suddenly do? So, I
Well, I
mean,
think it's like it's already like you've already seen it shake out with the BCHL is the most dramatically affected. You've had
yep,
some teams with 6, 7 guys just immediately depart for the Western Hockey League.
yep,
And that's an immediate change. And I do think it elevates all levels of NCAA hockey, but also ACHA hockey. I think
yeah.
here in the U.S., I think the Dan K Show guys really hit on something very important. Now, with all the transparency in junior hockey, parents are going to really look at value, not just like the league. Okay, like, oh, if my kid can play in the USPHL Premier compared to this other league, the NA3 or whatever it may be, but what program can make them better? Like, I think there's going to be a little bit of more focus on value because
Which it
some of
should have
the
been in the first place. No
sure,
offense, but
but
go
like if you
ahead.
take out the Division One opportunity off the table, now they're going to look at like, well, what my kid's 18 years old, he's got to get close to a certain level to play Division Two, Division Three, or ACHA hockey because that's going to be elevated too.
Right.
Where can he get better instead of like, well, 10 years ago that this team put a kid into Division One hockey.
Right.
That's not going to be even on the table anymore. So like, where can he get better? And you're going to see operators really focus on value and player development, which, um, I think that's a good thing in a lot of ways.
I mean, there's so much hypotheticals out there. I mean, just suddenly we see less junior teams because of the, as you just said, if you're not putting up value, if you're not moving kids up, like, are you going to even be around? And I still think there will be, but that's a possibility that we might see less. We might see more. I mean, junior. I mean, depending on what league you're in, you might see more. Um, I mean, but do we see less kids going the junior route in general, knowing that, hey, you know what, my opportunities might be slimmer nowadays than they were before? Again, there is a trickle down effect to this, and I think people forget that in the long run. Well, yeah, it's great for these. Again, it makes the NCAA product probably a lot more talented, a lot more better, but there is a trickle down effect, and it does now. You're affecting those kids that were not playing in the USHL, that were playing
Yeah.
in, the NOL, the NCDC, the EHL, NA3, I mean, every league, that's not
And,
tier
and, and,
one,
it,
considered, tier
and,
one.
it, and there's bad operators in every league who are still dinosaurs who are, doing two, 3 practices a week. And, there's still those operators who exist out of there and they're going to be, like that's going to be really tough for them to operate for sure. I do think there's going to be a contraction amongst all leagues,
Mhm.
up and down the 1 through 3. There's going to be a contraction, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
I was about to
That's
say,
not necessarily a bad
is
thing
that a good thing though too? Because now all of a sudden, like, you have to put up or shut up even at the youth levels.
for sure, for
Now,
sure.
but that's also a bad thing because if you're just you're coaching and to the best of your abilities as a youth coach at tier two level, not even AAA, but like, even AAA, like, you're doing the best you can. It just little Billy just can't get there. Like, he's just not working. Like, now all of a sudden you're under the gun more because there's only so many spots. Like, I think there's going to be, just like in any type of change. I mean, I think there's going to be positives, there's going to be negatives. unfortunately, I just don't know who's going to be affected the most by those positive and negatives. Outside of right now, the NCAA is Division 1 is the only ones, in my opinion, who are getting the most positive out of this because they just got a whole slew new giant talent pool that they all get to grab from, and you know that's huge.
That's the truth. I mean, I think the only people that really have benefited the most are Canadian hockey players
Yeah,
and NCAA Division 1 institutions.
right. 100%.
That's it.
And again, I
That's
mean,
it.
I know we could go much further down the rabbit hole, and I think we should definitely, save that probably for
And we got some guests coming up.
yeah. But again, we are in, this is groundbreaking. As you said, it's a seismic incident that, not incident, but seismic changed the entire landscape. And I think it's going to affect more levels than just what everyone's talking about. And, I'm here for it, baby.
I am too, Trev. I think that's a good place to leave us for tonight. We do have some great guests who are going to dive deeper into this subject matter in the coming weeks and months because it's definitely something you got to stay tuned into because it's as you said, it is seismic. So thanks for having me on, Trev. It was a good one tonight.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so yeah, for the Hockey Toolkit, I am Trevor DiCarlo,
And I'm Andrew Trumbull.
and we will you'll hear from us soon. You'll hear from our people. We'll see you.